can you still buy NPC like crew game packages, this sort of thing? This was a question recently that popped up on one of my videos, and I saw it in the feed, and I kind of singled it out right away, and I was like, that's my next video right there. Because it's important to kind of clarify these things and to talk to people about where these ideas come from, where these, where people are kind of coming up with these notions. Because yeah, you can hear someone make an assertion, oh yeah, it's like this, but they may have misread or they may have misunderstood something. And it certainly with something like this, it is a very delicate topic, and it is a topic worthy of discussion, because recently we got an update on Death of a Spaceman. Now, one thing that not a lot of people will understand is that going all the way back to those early days, and when you're talking about Star Citizen development, that's a long time ago. Back in 2013, we got an article from CIG, which kind of described how game packages are going to work, especially if you have multiple game packages. So the way CIG broke it down in this article, and I am going to 99.9% sure remember to put a link to that article in the description below. I desperately want you to read it because it's very important. But the way CIG basically breaks it down is that if you have multiple game packages on your account, each one of those packages counts as a character slot. Now remember, this was written in 2013, and we'll come back to that in a moment. But each one of these is considered a character slot, which means on a single account, you can have multiple playable characters. So if you're sitting there and you're playing on your account and you're like, well, my name is, Minion Soldier, it doesn't mean that everyone's going to be named Minion Soldier. Your broad overarching identifier to the community may be Minion Soldier, but underneath you might be able to differentiate different characters on your account. You could also assign various ships to those characters. So how that's all going to break down is it's entirely possible. Some of us use like a second account to kind of totally break that connection. So no matter how CIG kind of works it, if I need to get in and get some footage, but I don't want the Minion Soldier name on the person getting that footage, I have the means to do that. I broke my account into two like years ago. Which by the way is still possible. If you have the original stuff, you can still kind of gift your ships to others, other accounts, so long as it's like the original version of that thing and not a bought back version or an upgraded or so. I forget what all the rules are. Maybe that'll be a future video, or maybe I'll leave that to someone like Board Gamer or a Noobifier. But suffice it to say, you have multiple playable characters on a single account. You can convert one of these or multiple of these characters into NPCs. Now, the advantage is that you will go through the character creation process as normal. You will choose the look, you will choose the appearance, the clothes, everything for this NPC. Beyond that, they haven't elaborated, so it's not like there's a skill tree and you're like, oh, I want him to have gunnery, or oh, I want her to have science, blah, 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 blah. They haven't elaborated on that. And for good reason, because none of that stuff is really understood or developed or anything like that. We don't really know anything about it, but you will be able to pick their general basic physical appearance and then what clothes they're wearing. That character then ceases to be a playable game slot on your account as a playable character on your account and becomes an NPC that crews your ship. However, and this is the important thing, is that in the unlikely, though sometimes likely, event of your demise, that NPC can be named as your inheritor, and then you can basically replay that character as a playable character. Now, as a player. Now, this has gotten a little bit murky over the years, because originally when this document was written, the Agent Smith idea was still alive and well in the Star Citizen community. And the Agent Smith idea, for those of you that don't know, is if you converted these characters to NPCs that were going to be like piloting your ship. Let's say here I'm in a Cutlass, so I've got Jack Flack manning the turret, and he's a badass, and all of a sudden a buddy logs in and says, hey, yeah, man, I'd like to hang out, I'd like to man your turret. I could give that person permission to then inhabit the body of that NPC and play as that NPC. Now, CIG has since kind of wavered on this, because I think they kind of picked up on what a number of players were potentially capable of doing with this. One of the most difficult things to overcome when you're talking about things like Star Citizen, and often I use this example, players will compare, like, oh, well, I'm going to use, like, for instance, let's say I'm going to use my Reclaimer as a pirate ship, and someone says, oh yeah, well, I'm just going to bring a Retaliator and I'm blow your Reclaimer out of the sky. Well, we all know that it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it, because if that Reclaimer is all the way out at Microtech and you're all the way down at ArcCorp, by the time your Retaliator gets there, the Reclaimer might already be done and gone. And what if you're in the next star system over, One of the things that I think CIG didn't initially kind of figure out, and why agent smithing, I believe, is now off the table. Don't 100% quote me on this, but I think CIG has since pulled back on this, is because if you had a ship with a fully NPC crew, let's say, the same Reclaimer, you could instantly use that ship to give a gateway to a large number of players to all of a sudden be in a certain place at a certain time. They wouldn't be playing as themselves, but they would be able to teleport and more or less be anywhere they wanted to be in the universe, as long as one person was there. And so you can start to see all the different and interesting ways that you could project force via NPC crews. You could actually materialize an entire strike team or an entire attack wing anywhere in the universe at any time, so long as one person was there who had enough NPCs to allow for that to happen. And some people will say, oh yeah, well, gamers don't do stuff like that. Trust me, they do, and then some. Believe me, if you play EVE Online, you're just chuckling and going like, yeah, gamers don't do that. Okay. You'll know. WoW players too will know about things like that. And so it could be a very easy advantage to just kind of bring one ship in and then materialize like 20 playable, characters at any place in the universe that you really needed them to be. All you had to do was get one ship out there with an NPC crew. Bang, you're back in the game. So CIG has since walked back on that, but the idea of an NPC being your inheritor has never been walked back on, and the idea of using these different slots, these different character slots on your account as NPCs has never been walked back upon. So let's say you have 4 game packages, just basic Aurora MR game packages on your account, plus your core game package, the original game package that you bought that all your ships are on. You could technically, let's say you owned a Corsair, you could technically reassign those other 4 characters to NPCs and use them to man the turrets, the co-pilot station and the sensors on your Corsair, and you would have a fully manned ship, though manned by NPCs and AI, not by other players. You would have a fully crewed Corsair, and probably a reasonable approximation of a fully player crewed Corsair. So you would be not really in a bad position, and that is kind of where a lot of people have kind of fallen in with this, and they've kind of said, yeah, that's a good idea. So any game package that you purchase can effectively be turned into an NPC to populate your ship. That is, right now, that is how it is. So the game packages are still there. Now, ultimately, how is this going to manifest itself in the universe? Now, there may be conversations that I've missed. There may be comments that CIG has made that said, well, they're going to be this good or they're going to be that good. But in general, my expectation is that the core idea of being able to assign different character slots on your account to NPCs is still intact. And as for performance, there are some people out there who will tell you absolutely 100% that these NPCs are going to be just as good as a player in those individual slots in your ship, whether it's turrets, co-pilot, engineer, sensors, whatever. I am not convinced of that. Turrets, I can see, because turrets aren't that difficult of a thing to do, but in terms of the much more difficult and much more interactive elements of operating a ship, whether it's operating sensors or running a hack with your Herald, I'm not entirely convinced that AI is going to perform those tasks at a reasonable rate, and how that's all going to work, I'm not really sure. So there are certain tasks that I feel that NPCs are suited for, and certain tasks that I don't feel they're suited for. Now, if you happen to own, let's say, a caterpillar, and you want to take 2 gladiuses out as your escorts when you're running cargo, if you put 2 NPCs in those gladiuses that you own, they'll probably perform as well as NPCs flying gladiuses currently perform in the game. But I wouldn't stake my life on their performance, if you know what I mean. I'm sure that they're going to be good to a point, but how good ultimately, I wouldn't bet my life on it, right? It's kind of like any video game that you play. I mean, if you own Cyberpunk right now and you're seeing some goofy stuff with AI there, then you know what I mean. I'm not entirely convinced, but I think that they are going to be reasonable, especially when they're just manning turrets or manning simpler to operate systems on your ship. I think that they're going to be pretty decent. And the groundwork currently is already there, because we already have NPCs manning turrets, the NPC Hammerhead or NPC capital ships. They already do that, and they've been doing that for years. The only thing that we don't have to enable that for ourselves is, one, the UI to allow us to convert these game packages to these characters, and secondly, we don't have the UI or the control mechanisms to assign them to various places on our ship and say, you do the turret, you do, co-pilot, so on and so forth. Ultimately, it is still a door that is open. It is still something that currently is planned to be in the game, I hope. But at the same time, I would caution people to pull back from the idea of, well, I'm a one-man Idris now, thanks, minion. No. Don't. If you're sitting there and you're thinking, hey, I can fly around in my Hammerhead, I've got 6 NPC accounts and they're gonna, man all the turrets for me, maybe, but still a little bit iffy. Because there's probably going to be a lot more to operating these big ships than we currently have the ability to interface with. There was a comment when I was talking about Quantum, and someone had pointed out that, CIG plans a lot more for Quantum. We just don't really have access to those systems yet. And that can also be true of operating larger ships, just in general. Keeping those ships up and in the air and in the sky could be a lot more difficult than we currently are aware of, because a lot of the things that we have to interact with to facilitate that difficulty and hopefully that rewarding gameplay is simply not in the game yet. And so I would be very, very cautious when we're talking about capital ships and NPC crewed capitals or sub-capitals, or however we're going to classify the Polaris. I'm not quite sure yet. I would be very, very cautious about just saying, oh, yeah, here, I've got my 6 NPCs. They're going to man all my turrets for me on my Hammerhead. No problem. Sunny days and clear skies ahead. I'm not sure that that's going to be a thing. And I wouldn't bet the farm on it. But at the same time, if someone were to say, I just need a couple of people to man the turrets on my Caterpillar while I'm running cargo, I would say that that's a safe bet. If you need somebody to man the turret on your Cutlass to facilitate, a little extra power in combat, I would get behind that. I would say, yeah, that's a reasonable place to put them. Another person to sit in the turret of your vanguard, something like that. Sure. Someone to basically operate shields just in case, you know, one shield is going down and you're not seeing it in the moment. Sure. But beyond that, I'm not too convinced. Now, there is one other comment that I wanted to address, and it was someone who said that my cadence of speech was, I guess, equally grating and calming at the same time. And I think that that is intentional, because what some of you may have guessed at, and probably some of you maybe not, I'm sure most people will have figured it out, is I don't script my videos at all. The closest I come to scripting videos is literally, like, I don't know if you can hear this, that crinkly paper. That is the receipt from when I was at the grocery store buying fixins to make tacos, and I quickly jotted some stuff down on the back of that receipt in my car before I came home. I got some killer hot sauces for Christmas, so I'm having tacos tonight. I don't like scripted YouTube content, and one of the things that I found very early on when YouTube really kicked off is I was watching a lot of videos and they really kind of transformed into, hey, you know, well, thanks for coming to such and such channel. Don't forget to click like and subscribe and, you know, ring that bell and blah, 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 and do all these things and do all this other stuff. And all this professional kind of, you know, scripted, calm, monotone, announcer voice type videos telling you about, here are the game mechanics that you need to know. Do you want to know how to kill Sire Denathrius? And wow, we're going to tell you how in only 5 minutes. And all that content just put me to sleep, and just, I didn't like it because I didn't really feel a connection to the person who was making the videos. And so I made a very deliberate decision very early on to never script anything and to just kind of do it all off the cuff. Even if that means, oh, I don't like that, you know, I didn't like that segment, so I'm going to have to re-record the whole thing. Even if I have to do that 5 times to make a video, I would prefer to do that than to just run off a script and do it in one take, because the script feels so dry and just so devoid of, you know, just connection. And I don't know about you guys, but when I hear people tell jokes that they're reading off of a script, like the punchline just doesn't land at all. You know, I like the joke that's conversational, that just gets made up in the moment. It's like, hey, bang, you know, here's a zinger, you know. I like that stuff. The, you know, scripted content, just, it doesn't really appeal to me, and because it doesn't appeal to me, it's not the content that I would create. And so the cadence of my speech and the, you know, the reason why I might stumble over my words and blah blah blah, you know, like that is simply because I'm parsing out the entire video as I'm recording it, and there is nothing apart from like a few quick notes maybe jotted down on the back of a receipt saying, you know, talk about this and don't forget to talk about that, and then talk about the guy who finds you grating but calming at the same time. You know, that's it. That's my script, is like 3 sentences. Just do this, do this, do this. And so maybe that's why at the same, you know, it's grating because my cadence is off because I'm coming up with it as I'm speaking, and calming because it's conversational. It's like talking to a person instead of, you know, listening to an announcer. And that's why it is the way that it is. Anyways, that's the video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't too grating. I hope it was more on the calming side. And thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.